welcome you. Thank you for joining the program. When most people hear the name League of Women Voters, they think of voter registration and candidates forums, because for more than 100 years, the League has been the premier grassroots organization for voter education. But that's not all that we do. At the local, state, and national levels, the League is at the forefront of identifying and addressing key issues in our society. We're directly involved in educating people about the important issues that keep our communities strong. The purpose of tonight's program is to give community members an opportunity to hear directly from youth leaders, high school and college students who have been actively engaged in government. The League believes that inclusion means hearing from many different voices, listening and seeking to understand what people have to say. Tonight, we hear from 4 youth leaders who have been active in their schools and communities, what motivates them to take action, what topics are of special interest to them, what their hopes and fears are about the future, and what they're doing to shape that future. So I just want to take a minute to recognize our elected official who is in the audience tonight, Benton County Commissioner Zan Ojero. And I think, Zan, you're the only elected official here unless I missed somebody. Okay, thanks. We're going to start with a quiz. Yes, a quiz. And some brief remarks about knowing your power as a member of this community and a resident of this country. And then we'll hear from each of our 4 speakers. And after that, it will be the audience's turn to ask questions, either orally or in writing. And if you need a question card at any point during the program, Laura has them in the back. And if you raise your hand, she will bring you a question card. So let's start with a brief quiz. And if you think you know the answer, you can share it with the person sitting next to you. What is the order of presidential succession? In other words, who is in line after the vice president? All right, if you think you know, or if you have an idea, share it with the person next to you. Okay, all right, the next question is, I'm gonna ask all the questions and then we'll see the answers. Who is Oregon's Secretary of State? Who is Oregon's Secretary of State? All right, finally, how many people serve on the Corvallis City Council? And I certainly wouldn't expect you to know that if you don't live in Corvallis. So, all right, so let's go through the answers one at a time. Speaker of the House is the next one in line. So that means Speaker Mike Johnson would be the president. The president and vice president were unable to serve in that function. Next, who is Oregon's Secretary of State? She's fairly newly appointed. And so most of us would be hard pressed to get this one right. In fact, I'm not even sure how to pronounce her last name. Does anybody know? Nobody? We need to find out. Okay. And then, how many people serve on the Corvallis City Council? 9. All right. That's a larger number than most communities, I think. Well, if you didn't do so well on this quiz, don't feel bad, because fewer than 50% of adults in the US can even name the 3 branches of government. And hopefully everybody in this room knows what those 3 branches are. So that statistic is a great concern to our League, because one of the biggest threats to our democracy is ignorance, not understanding how our government works. And we have to ask ourselves, well, now, why is that? Why do fewer than 50% of adults in the US fail to name the 3 branches of government? Well, right after World War II, our public school system required classes like American government, US history, and foundations of democracy. How many of you were required to take 1 or more courses like that? Okay, well, we have a pretty educated group in here on those issues. But during the past few decades, some federal and state policies like No Group, No Child Left Behind and Common Core created incentives toward teaching and getting good test scores in reading and math at the expense of civics education, which has fallen by the wayside. And currently, there are only 8 states in the country that require at least 1 year of civics at some point between kindergarten and 12th grade. And we know that the better our society is educated in civics, the better we can influence a government that is designed to represent our interests. So that means understanding how our government works at all levels, local, state, and national, knowing where to find the information we need about the issues we care about, knowing who our elected officials are, and understanding how to effectively communicate with them. And finally, understanding the consequences of not being involved and of not voting, whether it be with our voices or ballot box. So what does the League of Women Voters do? Well, the League is a nonpartisan grassroots political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. The League is open to everyone, not just women in spite of our name. Everyone is welcome to join the League. We never endorse or oppose political parties or candidates, but we are directly involved in educating people about the important issues that keep our communities and our country strong. At the local, state, and national levels, we have standing positions on a wide range of topics, positions that we use to influence public policy. Our positions vary widely, from climate change to housing, from waste management to voting rights, from agriculture to childcare, and a whole lot more. The League is also known for our work on empowering community members to become informed and active participants in government. And we are very fortunate tonight to have 4 individuals who have started exercising their power at a very young age. So with that, our first speaker is Mary Parmigiani, who has lived in Benton County her whole life. She is currently a senior at Corvallis High School. Mary has been very connected to the Corvallis community through playing a variety of high school sports, as well as becoming involved in efforts to oppose expansion of the Coffin Butte landfill. Mary served on the Benton County Talks Trash Work Group and on its Community Education and Outreach Subcommittee. So please give Mary a warm welcome.
Thank you all for being here and for the opportunity to speak today. Okay, so how I got involved. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I got involved in a science fair project where I invented an air quality device with 2 other peers. And we called this device PACMAS. It was the Personal Air Quality Monitoring Station. And then with this device, we conducted a variety of studies, including an income disparity study, as well as a study of the air quality around the Coffin Butte landfill, which is kind of my connection to the landfill. We also worked with a statewide nonprofit, Beyond Toxics, to conduct the test by the landfill. And then I heard about the Benton County Talks Trash Work Group from the neighbors around the landfill, because we worked side by side with the tests. And these neighbors are known as VNEX, Valley Neighbors for Environmental Quality and Safety. And their group designed to basically oppose the landfill, as well as giving the community more information about the landfill. And the work group started in about September 2022, and I started the science project around July 2021, just to give some timing of that. And then, so the picture on the left is a photo from Beyond Toxics 2022 fall winter newsletter, and it shows basically our testing plan. So as you can see, the red stars are the testing sites, the purple circle is the actual landfill itself, and so on. And then the photo on the right is a newspaper article that talks about our device and got the attention of the neighborhood group. So they reached out to us, and then we tested around the landfill. So my involvement in the work group. So the work group was created to better educate the community on the Coffin Butte landfill, the history of the landfill, and other land use plans, and also a variety of other things about landfill and land use in general, like the legal side of it, SMMP plans, and other stuff like that. And then during my participation in the work group, I volunteered to be a part of the community education and outreach subcommittee. And in this committee, we worked to use more outreach methods that can better reach underrepresented groups such as the youth. And we did this by increasing social media usage. And then we worked on a final report that was over 1,000 pages and included information from all the subcommittees. So I believe there were 5 subcommittees. And then, so the picture on the left is the final work group report. It was completed in April 2023. And the picture on the right is actual landfill. So I got involved in the air quality project due to the Oregon wildfires in 2021. So I'm sure, as we all remember, there was ash in the streets and the sky turned red. It was pretty dystopian. And I wanted people to have this device so they could quantify their air quality concerns and their health concerns around that. And then through working with the community on the landfill, I got inspired to give the community living by the landfill and Benton County and beyond more information about the landfill, as well as fighting against landfill expansion. And so the picture on the left is in Gates, Oregon. So obviously nothing burned down in Corvallis, I don't believe, due to the wildfires, but this does give kind of representation of what the sky looked like, as well as the ash on the street. And then the picture on the right is the Stop the Landfill Expansion sign made by Phoenix. And I'm sure you see this in a lot of people's yards, even in Central Corvallis and South Corvallis. Okay, so challenges and successes. So I came into the work group as the only high school student and the only student, period. Everyone around me was professionals who worked at OSU and who specialized in land use. So I was very intimidated by this, and it was hard to find my voice at first. And just a more general challenge, it was hard to get youth involved and interested in the work group and the landfill expansion in general. When we did open houses, there was pretty much no young people there, and it's just hard to get young people involved in this sort of thing, especially high schoolers and even college students. But there were a lot of successes. So we were able to better educate the community. So we used more social media, and we even sent a postcard and announced our open house in April. And so we gave the youth and everyone information about the landfill. Whether they chose to act on it, is their decision, but we at least presented them with the information. And then with the landfill tests with PACMIS, we built the momentum that will likely lead to policy change. So there are 2 newspaper articles here, one from the Statesman Journal, one from the Gazette Times, about how the EPA found levels of methane at the landfill that were concerning over concentration standards. So my testing with PACMIS and the Beyond Toxics helped the EPA get interested in the landfill and conduct tests that proved what we all knew was true, is that the methane was over the concentration standards. And so in the future, I hope that youth involvement, people follow their passion, generate just more curiosity in youth in general. I also hope to get involved in whatever community I am when I go to college. I do fear, though, that there's not enough care given by governments and other entities for youth participation. And yeah, I hope others can, use what I did and just use what all the panelists did here to find inspiration to act in their community. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Mary. Appreciate your work. Our next speaker is Evan Tucker, who is a political science major at the University of Oregon. In his hometown of Grants Pass, Evan led multiple nonviolent protests in support of human rights and democracy. He and his co-leader earned the Oregon Safe Schools Award for their activism at Grants Pass High School fighting for LGBTQ+ rights. Last spring, Evan studied abroad as a human rights fellow, learning from University of Oxford professors and leading worldwide activists how to effectively fight for human rights. Evan hopes to share this learning with young voters across Oregon and the nation. He currently serves as an intern for the City Club of Eugene, as a civic engagement program assistant for the Holden Center for Leadership and Community Engagement at the U of O, and is a member of the League of Women Voters of Oregon Youth Council. Please welcome Evan to the podium. All right, let's get your slides all set up here. And the microphone. If you're a little taller than I.
Is this good? Hi, everyone. My name is Evan Tucker. a sophomore political science student at the University of Oregon, and this is my activist story. It all began in middle school. So my first things that I ever did were school walkouts. In 2019, after the shooting in Parkland, Florida, I started a school walkout. Here's me outside of my home in Grants Pass, where I had a sign with multiple school shootings on it saying rest in peace. And then in 2018, I had my first women's march, holding an equality sign. What really impassioned me to start making a difference in my community was I saw a lot of things that were being done and nothing was being done about it. So it was really important for me to take a step up and take initiative. And then in high school, there was something that happened in my school district where some teachers used school time and equipment to promote anti-LGBTQ+ legislation. So my partner, Deanie, and I, who was also in the youth council, we decided to do a school walkout amassing around 200 to 300 students. And there's some pictures of us there. And then in college is really when I started getting things rolling. I decided to study political science because I felt that it was really gonna set me up to make a difference in policy. In the first picture, there's me at the Oxford Consortium for Human Rights, where I was learning under multiple Oxford professors, University of Oregon professors, and working with multiple human rights activists all across the world. And then I also attended the Young Democratic Socialist Winter Conference in Chicago in April, and that's where I learned about some dorm storming techniques and how to get people registered to vote. And then when Tina Kotek was running, she came to the University of Oregon, and there is me getting to meet her for the first time. And I spoke with an hour for her wife, talking about what it was like for me in paying for school. My parents are not able to help me pay for school in the capacity that they would like. And due to this, and my father being a nurse during COVID, my EFC was spiked and I wasn't able to get the scholarships that would help me pay for school. And then also in my first year, I decided to join the League of Women Voters Youth Council, where I'm the youth voter strategist. Voting has been something that I've always been passionate about. I come across so many college students that have struggles not being able to vote, not knowing how to vote. And that's something that I really try and talk about. And then in my second year of college, I got a job at the Holden Center for Leadership and Community Engagement. There I'm the civic engagement program assistant. And one thing that I do is I run the pizza and politics events at the University of Oregon, where I put together curriculum and monitor different discussions on different topics with students all across the campus. This next one, we'll be talking about government shutdowns and how they affect student life. Recently, I also put together a program on education policy. I brought together different students across the political spectrum on campus to talk with the community about what the future of education policy should look like in Oregon. And I did that with the City Club of Eugene, which is my internship. On the left in that picture are some Oregon aspiring educators. They are sort of graduate students that are aspiring to be teachers. And then to my left is the vice president of the University of Oregon Democrats. And then to the left of him is the president of the University of Oregon College Republicans. During this, we found that there's a lot more agreement than disagreements between students. And when we try and find common ground and respect one another, a lot of progress is made. And then here, if you'd like to connect with me, talk about anything, I would love to. So I have my contact information, organizations that I am connected with, and my LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I have some questions I'm gonna ask you a little bit later too. Curious. So, I think I'm gonna close this up. Our tower. So our next speaker is Lithia Fultner, who is a 20-year-old first-year student at Lynn Benton Community College. She currently holds the title of Legislative Affairs Director of LBCC's Student Leadership Council. Lithia plans to transfer to OSU to complete her bachelor's degree in business. She prides herself on advocating for people with disabilities, as well as those struggling with mental health. She believes that the stigmatization of these two groups of people is unacceptable in today's society. Lithia believes everyone should be given equal opportunity, and she is here to make that happen. Please give Lithia a warm welcome.
Hi, I'm Lithia. I recently took the role of Legislative Affairs Director at LBCC, just this fall, actually. I went to Welcome Day, met some people from the Leadership Council, and they told me a little bit about what they do, how they help students, just really what they do. And I was like, oh, okay, this sounds cool. I've always wanted to help people with the same struggles as I do, because in all reality, there aren't that many disabled people advocating for those with disabilities. And so I rolled into the student leadership office and met with the other legislative affairs director, Kay, and they told me all about what they do. And I said, boy, howdy, sign me up. And I am here. And I have a commitment to advocate for individuals with disabilities, as well as those grappling with mental health challenges that tend to extend over significant periods of time. One of my passions and a means through which I champion the cause for my communities is content creation. Through videos and various media formats, I've been sharing insights into my daily life since a mental health crisis resulted in my disability a little over 2 years ago. I want to shed some light onto the circumstances that led to my disability. I grew up in an environment where mental health issues were unmistakably present, but were quietly dismissed due to social stigmatization. Any mental divergence was considered shameful, and thus discussions about mental health were often suppressed. In this atmosphere, depression was misconstrued as laziness, and mania was dismissed as mere frivolous energy. Consequently, I remained unaware that my consistent behaviors were indicative of the textbook warning signs of suicidal thoughts. After detailing the consequences of my amputations and my journey through a mental health crisis online, I discovered that growing up oblivious to one's mental health challenges is regrettably widespread, as well as subject to intense stigma. I was dismayed to find the physical disabilities often stemming from these mental health struggles face societal non-acceptance. The prevailing ableism in our world is undeniable. While acknowledging that our current world is more accessible than it was 3 decades ago, I, as an individual with disabilities, still encounter many daily challenges not faced by able-bodied individuals. Tasks as simple as opening a heavy door at school, accessing certain buildings around town, or even using the restroom in certain businesses remain significant obstacles. This lack of accessibility is simply unacceptable. Again, amidst the cause for equality from various communities, I emphasize the significance of equity. While equality is essential, the term we should prioritize is equity. Equity recognizes that each person grapples with different circumstances and necessities, providing tailored resources and opportunities to ensure an equal outcome. I firmly believe in affording everyone an equal opportunity So my involvement in student government is driven by the desires to advocate for equity on behalf of individuals struggling to keep pace with their peers due to mental and physical reasons beyond their control. All of us deserve the chance to achieve our highest potential, and I'm committed to being the voice that secures the necessary resources for students to thrive. I believe that it's very important. Equity is the most important thing. It's very sad that, as I said before, there's not that many people advocating for those with mental health struggles and physical disabilities that also have mental health struggles and physical disabilities. And I find it very important to use the voice that I have here, online, at my own school, to advocate for the people that cannot. And yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Lithia. Appreciate your presence here tonight. Our final speaker is Carissa O'Donnell, who is a third-year undergraduate honors student studying environmental economics and policy within the College of Agricultural Science at Oregon State University. She plans to graduate in the spring with a Bachelor of Science degree and a minor in political science. Carissa is currently working on her honors thesis, which articulates her efforts in establishing a shared micromobility program on the OSU Corvallis campus. Within her role as ASOSU, Associated Students at Oregon State University president, Carissa hired and oversees an executive branch of 23 members. She sits on the university president's cabinet, acts as co-budget manager for the ASOSU organization, and helps set the student incidental fee at OSU, which last year totaled $33 million. Please give Carissa a warm welcome.
Hello. Thank you all so much for having me. That stole a bit of my thunder, but I might just go through and repeat a couple of things. But again, my name is Carissa O'Donnell, and I sit as the Oregon State University student body president this year. And it's been an amazing experience, so I'm super excited to share it with you. But originally, I am from Larkspur, Colorado, which is a really rural town about an hour south of Denver. There's about 200 of us in that town, 199 now that I'm here. But yeah, I've been studying environmental economics and policy and political science, and I see a lot of that cross-section also coming into my advocacy efforts within my position as president right now too. So I think it's really interesting to see, again, those intersectionalities and then kind of how environmental justice plays into public policy that we see. So that kind of, you look at it at a local level, you look at it at the state level, and even at the federal level as we're going through lobbying efforts in that area too. So in high school, this might come as a surprise to you all, but I also served as the student body president within my high school. And I didn't think that it would really transfer over to the university, but ironically enough, it did. The spring of my freshman year at OSU, I ran to be a member of the House of Representatives that we have, and I actually won that seat. And so I quickly started to take an interest in the policy and the discussions that would happen in these meetings, as well as the actions and advocacy issues that we were able to pioneer just within a student Congress. And so I sat on the campus improvements committee, and we worked on initiatives that directly impacted students and improved the quality of our campus. So we certainly felt the effects and barriers generated by very busy student schedules, as well as kind of the administrative road bumps and the coordination it took to kind of align about 33 student representatives for one meeting. So looking at all of that, it made it a little bit slower when we were looking at our advocacy efforts. I soon realized that I don't really have a lot of time here, and I wanted to be able to make greater change in that seemingly shorter period that I had and realized. So it was the winter of my second year at OSU that I decided to run for ASOSU president. I found and began working with my now VP and very dear friend Dakota Canzano. We actually met for the first time through this campaign. So we kind of sat down over 2 very large cold brews and tried to workshop what our campaign would look like, as well as like the advocacy issues that were both important to us so that we could kind of use that as our starting block. And I use the word starting block very seriously, as that was like the basis of our efforts. But then we did realize that although we had priorities that kind of ranged from our experiences within student government, there was a lot that we didn't know and that we kind of had to reach out and ask students about. And I think that was something that was very new to students. They weren't really used to that. And so we brought a blank Microsoft Word document to all of the presentations that we gave within the campaign. We presented to over 50 student groups, Greek life houses, and then clubs and organizations on campus. So that was very cool. It was very tiring, but it's very, very worth it. So we had that blank Google Doc, and at the end of that experience, we actually had a very populated document that we used as the kind of skeleton for the efforts that we're pushing forward now. And there was a lot of overlap among the different discussions that we had with student groups and what they would like to have had on that document. And so it made it abundantly clear, like what were the very pressing needs and what we kind of had to get working on now. And so using kind of the priorities that we set in place, as well as those that we learned along the way, we kind of curated this campaign that was pretty much made by students. And so we coined our campaign slogan. It was people, not politicians. And I really do think that that's true as we go through it. We just saw that we were in we had this circumstance and this opportunity to kind of push these objectives that students have really been waiting for. And we thought and knew we had the knowledge and the kind of experience to do so. And so that's kind of how I found myself here. The campaign lasted about 2 months and I learned 3 very valuable lessons from it. One is the value of sleep. 2, I learned the stories of students and how we can best accommodate them and like bring them into the discussions happening within our student government. And then 3 is just the value in balance. So you did hear a lot of very accomplished students come up and talk about their experiences, but all of us have that element of balancing, whether it be your presidential campaign, whether it be your studies, your social life, and then also your well-being. The balance is the most important part that I've come to acknowledge while I've been going through this. And so I've also learned sacrificing any aspect of that part of your life weakens the others. And so I think that is probably the biggest learning lesson that I experienced out of the campaign. And then even within my position now. So I've been working about 40 hours a week since June 1st when we were inaugurated. And I'll go into the priorities that we've been running on and maybe provide updates. I know I don't have a lot of time, so that might come for the Q&A session afterwards too. But the first one was really just bridging the gap. So if you were to go onto our campus and ask a student what ASOSU is maybe like 6 months ago, I really hope that that answer has changed since now, because we didn't really have a huge knowledge base when it came to what students knew about our organization and how we actually have a direct influence in the tuition that they pay, which means they have a direct influence in the tuition that they pay. And so just kind of, again, meeting students where they're at in regards to communication. We have like 4 different avenues of communication right now, whether it be social media, so our Instagram page, we have an email listserv, we have access to an all-student email if we think that there's a situation dire enough to send that message out. And then we also have different tabling events where we're just on the ground talking with students. And so I have an amazing marketing team that helps me out with that, but that's kind of one of the main things that we noticed as we were going through our campaign and also even into like the early stages of our administration. The next was more mental health care and representation within our mental health programs. And so in that sense, we've had the overutilization of traditional components of healthcare or mental health care, apologies, on campus. And so it's more so we're working with the administration to extend and like provide more of those resources. But while we're doing that, what can we provide students with now? And so it's kind of a balancing act in that sense, and hoping that we reach the students that we need to, while also being sure that in the future that resource is very abundant or more abundant than what it is now. The third one I have on here is just student employment benefits. So as we go and look at the cost of living and how it changes, especially in Corvallis, just accommodating that when it comes to student wages, the hours that students can work a week as a student employee, and then also our students are only paid monthly. Our entire university staffing is only paid monthly right now. And if you forget to submit your timesheet 1 month, you have to wait 2 months until you're able to receive those funds. And so we're looking at first having emergency withdrawal. So if that does happen, you don't have to wait 2 months and kind of risk that financial strain really on accessing your money that you worked for. And then the other aspect of that is like, how can we make your frequency of pay more frequent? So working on biweekly paychecks. The fourth one I have on here is communal advocacy and equity. So supporting communities and cultural centers that we have on campus that in turn provide that sense of belonging and representation for a really broad base of students on campus. So this includes the inclusion of gender neutral amenities on campus, especially restrooms right now. And then finally, because I am an environmental econ major, sustainability. So just what it does it look like to have more convenient alternatives to sustainability on campus? One of those being shared micromobility. So when it comes to like bikes and electric scooters, having that opportunity for students so that if you are going through kind of a commuter and you have to park somewhere far from your campus, you have the opportunity to kind of use that as your last mile, they call it last mile, like source of transportation. And so that's an effort that began both within the city and then within campus also. And we're working on now implementing it on campus with the hopes that it'll kind of progress into the city of Corvallis also. So I'd be happy to answer more questions on that too, as I'm doing my thesis on it, so I've become quite interested in the topic. Other things that I've done or our administration has done since being here is we have hired a staff of over 23 executive branch members. I've never been on the other side of an hiring process, so that was very interesting for me. And I also learned a lot and have such an amazing staff now that I hope that you all have the opportunity to meet in one avenue or another. But yep, within the university, I do sit on the president's cabinet, so I serve in a lot of different roles at the administrative and higher levels within the university. I act as the student voice to them. And so I take that job very seriously. And if there are times when I feel like I'm not qualified to provide that student input regarding like whatever committee I've been assigned to sit on, I delegate that out to a student that might better provide the input that's needed at that level. So in regards to the university president's cabinet, that is something that I will sit on. But if there are different task forces, like we have a freedom of speech task force right now in regards to how can students kind of protest against protesters that come to campus since we're a public university. That is something that I feel like another student might be more equipped to handle. That is something that I would probably give that role to someone else. So I do see value in kind of diversifying the idea of representation on campus. So although I do sit at the forefront of that, I use this more as a delegating position. And so I think it's going well so far. But another thing we did is just amid the conference realignments that Oregon State University is going through athletically. Oh gosh, we had a live stream that we pushed for with the university president and athletic director. And it was really just a way for students to talk to their student leadership that are kind of making those decisions about how this might affect them as a student, what might be the difference in your going to a sporting events experience. But it really was students' main concerns were, well, what is going to happen to my tuition and my student resources? And so being able to kind of bring those voices to them and ask those questions up front to university leadership proved to be very beneficial in that element. Another aspect is I also sit and I also report to the Board of Trustees at Oregon State University. So I will provide the student report. The Board of Trustees meets once every quarter. And so we kind of create a report that I then go through and articulate before I deliver to them. And an ask we have this year is just that trustee members kind of meet students more and kind of come to more community events and be more present on the campus in which they have a very high governing authority over. Other events that we've been doing, so at the state and federal level, we meet with different representatives to again share our experiences and our concerns with higher education, especially as it relates to funding models. And we also advocate for basic student needs. So we're looking really closely at the Hunger-Free Campus bill and hoping that that comes back in the short session, as well as we recently had a meeting with staff members from Representative Chavez DeRemer's administration. And we're just looking at how the federal government, especially the House of Representatives right now, is looking at work study and the possible removal of it, which we're advocating against. But those are some lobbying efforts that we do, as well as every spring we will take students to Washington DC to do their own lobbying. So we'll kind of prepare them, we'll set up the meetings, and we'll also fund the expenses that it takes for a student to go to DC. And that hope is to really just, again, bring students to the places where their voice truly matters, and then in a way that's fiscally like they're able to do. Yes. But then we also host programs, voter campaigns, involvement opportunities, and resource distribution events for students. And so it's really interesting to me to kind of sit in this position because we have a hand in pretty much everything that's going on campus. And so our staff works extremely hard, and then we more so are able to provide that metaphorical microphone for students, with the knowledge that sometimes we need to pass that microphone off and let people amplify their voices with the platform that we can provide them. As co-budget manager for ASOSU, I directly control our budget, and we're anticipating lowering that ask as we see the cost of living rising in Corvallis. This should come at no detriment to the resources, but so ASOSU will not even really notice the changes, but it will be very impactful for students. That's the hope. That's the hope. But my big project currently, again, is the shared micromobility and how to bring such a program back to Corvallis and OSU, because we did have a bike share program. And so kind of seeing what it's going to take and what policies need to be amended to bring that back in. So those are just some efforts that I'm working on, but I'd love to answer any questions, or if anyone would like to get into contact with me after, I can share my business cards or email address. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so now I'm gonna ask, thank you so much, Carissa. Now I'm gonna ask all of our speakers to come up front and take your places, because it's time for some questions from our audience. And you may ask your question either orally or in writing, and Laura has 3x5 cards if you'd like to use a question card. Just a couple of guidelines. Please ask a question rather than making a statement. If you're asking a question orally, please keep your question brief, no more than 30 seconds, since we want to get to as many questions as possible. And I am going to alternate between written and oral questions. So does anybody have any questions yet? Yes, David in the back. Can you speak up, please?
I'll be the shill in the back.
Okay.
Mary, how did you ever, as a group that you worked with, wrap your heads around the concept that Benton County only provides 12% of the trash, the landfill, and that it comes from all these other places? I was just curious how you could even address that.
So I'll repeat the question. How in your work with the Benton County Talks Trash Work Group did you wrap your heads around the fact that only, I think it's 10 to 12% of the trash that comes into Coffin View actually comes from Benton County?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So just before the work group, we got involved with the neighborhood group, and that was really something that we talked about a lot. Like that's one of their main points and my main points for not wanting the landfill expansion. And then within the work group itself, that was something that came up a lot, like probably more than anything else. And yeah, so we tried to spread that information to the community and just give them that information, and then, you know, whatever they want to do with that, just a non-biased point of view that our the landfill that we're hosting it takes like 10% of our trash. So obviously that's I think that surprised a lot of people, and just give that information out was the most important thing to us, because I think that sways people's opinions a certain way when they hear that. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Do we have any written questions yet? Because I have a few. So, Evan, in your presentation, you mentioned some of the techniques that you learned to try to engage students, and you said dorm storming techniques. Can you talk a little bit about that and explain what that means?
Yeah, so dorm stormings were something that were actually started by Bernie Sanders when he first started running for Congress. It's essentially where him and other people that are running on his campaign went into different dorms across the University of Vermont. And they would split off and go to every single dorm within that building and got as many students as they could register to vote. And something that I learned about this was actually from some University of Vermont students where I forgot exactly what position they're running for, but there was a student running for a public position and did this and ended up winning because they went around through the dorms, getting people registered to vote. And it's something that I am really passionate about, and I think that is something that would be really great for the University of Oregon. Obviously, it wouldn't be done by the university, but it'd be something that I could do potentially as just a student or someone with the League of Women Voters of Oregon. And yeah, just something that I'm really passionate about and I'm looking forward to doing in my next 2-3 years at the university.
Great, thank you. Oh, yes, Keith.
I brought my middle school daughters with me tonight, and I'm wondering if you have any advice for them for starting the journey of becoming engaged citizens.
The advice that you would give to middle school students in becoming engaged.
Okay, I might take this one then. I think that the first step that I took really to get engaged really was joining student government. So you kind of look at student government and you think it's more so, especially as it relates to middle school and high school, it's very like, oh, we're planning the dances and then we're doing this and this. But that kind of element and organization also leads you to inquire more about what the actual government is doing, especially when you're structured so similarly. You're like, ooh, I'm in the executive branch. You know who else is in the executive branch? Maybe in Washington, DC, but kind of similar, right? Especially in middle school. But I think that was something that did definitely influence me in regards to kind of how I got here, especially within my position as student body president in my high school amid COVID. There was a lot of policy work and then kind of governmental back and forth that we had to look at. And I think that might have been my starting point. But does anyone else want to?
Yeah, so I was also student body president, but this was actually in middle school, but I also did lower things in high school, but something that I did that I was really passionate about, I had a lot of friends that were girls, and we noticed that they were getting dress coded at a higher rate than the guys for wearing the same things. We noticed that this disparity was something that needed to be solved. So I went to board meetings and drafted a new dress code after speaking with my friends that were girls, and we ended up getting that changed, and also something that a lot of my friends really appreciated. So if you ever see anything that isn't being done that needs changed, it's always great to take initiative. My dad really helped give me the courage to do so. He's always played a large role in trying to uplift me whenever I'm feeling frustrated with something. So maybe finding an adult figure to help you, find that motivation is something that would be awesome.
I would just say like getting involved in the community, because people are a lot more accepting of young people than I think you think. And even though it is like intimidating at first, there's people who give you a lot of patience, just as they do like a regular adult. So yeah, I would just like get involved and don't worry about like, feeling intimidated and like that, because it's a lot more welcoming than you think.
That was I gotta keep track. I said I would go back and forth between oral and written. So I think this is a question that Lithia, can probably help us answer first. What mental health services are currently provided? First at LBCC, that question's for you, and at OSU, and I would add maybe at U of O and Corvallis High School. I mean, you're all in school, so. Lithia?
Well, I can only talk for LB, but we have so many, it's so fun. We have our therapists. You can walk, right into the, student help desk and we can get you right in, actually. It's usually, depending on who's open and who's not, you can get in the same half hour. We have a wellness room, which is really nice to go to in time of crisis, to chill, hang out. There's just, it's a very nice, relaxing environment. We also have, LB has their own crisis line, which goes directly to the, counselors at LB. And we focus a lot on helping each other, which I don't know. And all the teachers are very well versed from my experience in mental health, and they always make it a point to say that they are there for you. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I haven't been in this role for that long, but because of my own needs, I have explored. But I would definitely recommend if you're ever at LB and ever need anything to help you, go to the wellness room. It's quite nice.
We also have a wellness room, and it is really nice, especially as an out-of-state student. They have a UV light in there, so that when you kind of get into the winter time in Oregon and you're not used to the lack of sun, you can go into that room, and that also does help. As yeah, they've reported that it is very helpful. Some other resources that OSU has is we have a new app, actually. It's called the Anytime Anywhere, and it's 24/7 mental health care and support. And so what we've noticed is that the overutilization within our CAPS program, which is our counseling and psychological services program, the overutilization comes from the traditional form of continuous therapy sessions, mainly because we don't have as many counselors as we do the demand for students to use that service. So right now, what we're trying to analyze is, are there other options for students? So maybe this is just because this is the traditional form that you might have grown accustomed or familiar to, or even just like heard of when you think of mental health care. But there are other options out there. So we have like group therapy sessions. We have the Anytime Anywhere app. We have a new program going in our rec center that's called the Find Your Fit program. So it's kind of looking at, well, what if you don't want to go to the gym necessarily to kind of like gain muscle or get in shape, but what if you're going because you want that aspect of mental health that comes from exercise? And so right now what we're looking at is tying all of these elements together. And we also are, as a student government, looking at instilling an empowerment hour at our gym, so that it's a space that's reserved maybe once a week for an hour for people who are less familiar with the gym that can come in, and then hopefully removing that intimidation that comes from going to the gym. We've seen that a lot with female presenting users at our rec center. So providing that like women's hour and empowerment hour so that they have that kind of accessibility to recreational and mental well-being that comes from that. Some other aspects we're looking at right now involve like what it means to be a student that lives in a dorm, and how can we better facilitate conversations among roommates is something that is also something that kind of causes some mental stress. And so there's a lot of different avenues at play and gears turning within our CAPS program. It's really like, how do we as a university best kind of push you or put you in the direction that you need to go in regards to the services that you need, and how do we make room for the people that really do need those traditional sources?
There's, I think we have 4 counselors and a licensed therapist. There's also obviously suicide hotlines and stuff like that. We don't have a lot because we're just nice. I wish we had more. We don't have a lot, so.
Yeah, in my experience with the University of Oregon, I'm not super qualified to talk on individual programs that they have, but it's been very frustrating as someone who's had to need access to these before, and they were booked out weeks in advance. So it was very frustrating for someone who needed something urgently, and I didn't have access to it.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for those. And Diana, you had your hand up.
Yes, I have a question for Mary and Lithia. You mentioned difficult to involve youth in your projects. And I was wondering if you had a way that produced more involvement for the economically diverse or transportation challenged youth that you were trying to involve.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how to, whether you've had successes and what they have been in engaging other youth.
Yeah, so for that, I would say using social media a lot, is a big one. And then one of the successes that I've had with youth participation, was that we actually taught people in the landfill community, the youth, how to use our air quality device, and some of the youth are using it right now. So they're able to empower themselves, with air quality information and share it with their community. So kind of taking that kind of role in their community and us giving them that role in their community, has been good youth participation. But it's really hard to get youth involved in things like the landfill and stuff like that, because it's obviously not it's not like the shiniest thing. People call it the dump and stuff, so it's not, yeah, it's also not super well known. So yeah, I'm trying to help spread information with landfill and stuff like that, but it's definitely an uphill battle, I'd say.
All right, the question was also directed at Lithia.
Youth engagement, as I have said, I am very new at this, so it's not 100% my forte to answer this yet. But we do have booths. I think it's once a month for student leadership. We go and sit in the forum, I guess you would call it, Takina Hall at LB. And we have our whole setup. And it really just talks about student leadership as a whole at LB and how you can get involved. Not too many people want to go out of their way to participate in SLC, in my experience. I don't get that many people walking up to the booth. But all we can do is keep trying, and that's why we sit there once a month. I think we're gonna turn it into every other week to try harder, but I think that's all we can do is try harder, and if people want to, they will. If they don't, they won't.
Well, so Lithia, since you have the microphone, do you want to say a few words about I understand you have a blog and you use social media quite a bit, is that right?
Yeah, I do. After my amputations and the mental health crisis that I talked a little bit about, I gained a considerable following on social medias, and I took that chance to use that as my opportunity to destigmatize is my biggest thing. If we want success and progress, we need to first destigmatize the problem. And my biggest thing, I guess, was to show that those of us struggling with mental health are not broken, we're not damaged, we're not monsters, which is actually something I've been called before. And to really just show my day-to-day life. Some days things are harder, some days it's easier. We're just people. Maybe sometimes it's hard to get out of bed than a mentally healthy person it would be, but I really just share my day-to-day life and do what I can to show people that we are still people, and if anything, we just need more love and acceptance than maybe a mentally healthy person would. But it's also, another thing is it's okay to ask for help. That's actually something I've been really big with, especially this holiday season. Many people are super depressed during the holidays, and I want people to know that it's okay to reach out for help right now. You don't have to be sad and do it alone. You can be sad and have somebody comfort you. Might not make it all better, but you'll still have somebody there. And so, yeah, that's really what I try to do online, is to show people that it's okay. They're not broken. and they're no less human than anybody else just because they struggle with certain things.
Thank you so much. Here's a question from an audience member. As individual student leaders, what are the biggest barriers you see in your work? What are the biggest barriers? Or what is one of your biggest barriers? It doesn't have to be the biggest, but what's something that is a barrier, would you say?
I think the aspect that we're all students, sometimes it's hard to remember that we're also still learning as we're sitting in these positions. So sometimes you're expected to have all the answers, maybe more so when you are a female in a position of power that traditionally was held by a male. And so kind of thinking about aspects like that and the idea that we're all still here to learn and we're taking these opportunities to again learn. And another barrier that kind of happens because of that and because of the aspect that we're students is that we are kind of on this time constraint where we're only really in these positions for a short while, but we have so many ambitions and things that we want to see accomplished that sometimes you have to rationalize it and sometimes you do have to kind of look towards the ways that you can get things implemented or even set up for the next group that will come after you. And so those are some things that I'm realizing as we're going like halfway through our administration right now.
For me personally, just being an undergraduate student, it's very easy to get overwhelmed when you're learning so much in such a short amount of time. You only have 4 years to get your degree, get internships, pay for school, get jobs, and do all of that while also maintaining great grades. It can be incredibly difficult and easy to get overwhelmed. And something that I've really noticed with myself is actually speaking with Diana earlier today about this is when I first start something like the beginning of the school year, it takes me a minute to get rolling. And then once I get going, that's when it starts to click and things get easier. So just trying to get the ball rolling and getting over that hump of just being overwhelmed is something that's probably been the hardest part for me.
Any additional things? What's been one of your biggest barriers to your work that you're doing?
I would say just like not enough information. I think again with the landfill, not a lot of people know about it. And those that do know a lot about it, but it's only like a very select subset of the population. So just getting that information to and getting people excited about the landfill. Sorry. That's
Shiny.
I would say, I feel like somebody, can't quite remember who said it, but the amount of information coming in at one time, it is insane. And it's very hard to keep everything together and know everything and then be at the booths, as I talked about, and have students come up and ask you, so what does so-and-so do? And you're like, I have no idea. It is very hard to swallow the fact that you have no clue, but it is okay to say that you have no clue. But then they'll look at you and be like, you should know, sorry. So I think it's really the fact of just trying to keep everything and all the information organized, but also allowing yourself to not be perfect and to be okay with that. It's the being okay with not being perfect when you're in a student leadership position.
Do we have Ruby?
I'm curious what each of you plan to do with your degrees after you graduate.
What do you plan to do with your degree after you graduate? Well, you can start, Lithia, because the mic is down at your end.
I am a business major. I'm very excited. But I actually plan to do something completely different than student government, nothing related. But I am going to start a salon and as well as keep up with my affiliate marketing, which my business degree is going to help a lot with. But I plan on starting a salon and continuing my online with my affiliate marketing, user-generated content, online marketing really is what I plan to do. And my salon will definitely be boasted by the business degree and the marketing that I plan to study along with that.
So I'm getting my major in environmental economics and policy and a minor in political science. And then I've actually been thinking about this question a lot because I'm graduating in the spring. And so, I'm currently, my plan is to go to law school and study environmental law. But I've become very interested in the aspect of environmental justice and kind of how those intersectionalities and how like people are affected by the decisions that we make that in turn also affect the planet. But I think the economics aspect of my degree has made it very interesting for me to kind of view all of the different aspects at play when you're considering the environment and climate change. So that is my plan currently.
So I have, it's kind of up in the air right now. I'm thinking about diplomacy. I've really been interested in international relations recently. I read a really good book about the European Union, and then that really got the ball rolling for there. Or I'm looking at going into workers' rights law, going to law school. I'm not exactly sure where yet. That's a long ways down the road, but that's something that really interests me in my work with the Young Democratic Socialists of America. The University of Oregon put together the largest undergraduate student union in the country, and that's really got me involved in student unions and workers' rights.
So I'm still in high school. When I graduate high school, I want to major in environmental engineering. Maybe minor in like history or something, because I'm really interested in that as well. I want to go somewhere on the East Coast or in California, just anywhere but in Oregon. That's about it.
Let's see. Can each of the students talk about social media, how it is used, how it has changed, more or less problematic than it seemed to be pre-pandemic? Has it changed over? I mean, you guys have been living in interesting times the last few years, you know, spending a good bit of your school years and, you know, during the pandemic. So what would you have to say about social media?
I think like anything, it has a lot of positives and drawbacks. I think during the pandemic, it enabled people to be a lot more connected. I don't know what we do without it. I think we take for granted a lot of things that it does, like you're able to call your grandparents that live far away that you couldn't visit during the pandemic, and stuff like that. I do think that it has changed a bit. I think there's a lot more criticism on the internet, on social media than there used to be. But yeah, for me personally, I view it as a positive thing, just because I've kind of grown up with it and I don't really know like a world without it. So I use it to connect with people, to give information to people, and to, yeah, just mainly connect with people. So, yeah.
For me, I would say that social media has been an overall good. It's been a way for me to connect with a lot of other political and organizers across the world and across the nation. So that's been a really big tool for me. As well, it's something we can use to get the word out about different things, like different projects going on, different events, different ways to get people registered to vote, which I use. And there's something before the 2020 election, when we're all, you know, locked away in our homes, it was something that I used to show my opinions and kind of, you know, it's something that just kept me busy during during those times when we're locked away.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at social media as a tool, especially as it relates maybe to leadership and advocacy efforts, there definitely are benefits. So you've noticed that social media campaigns and pushes are going to be more effective and reach more students than an on the ground like poster hung up in a dorm room. And so if you're looking at it from the aspect of getting the word out about information, I do see it as being a benefit especially as it relates to like our organization and the ways in which we've used it. And I think it's just that it's also an ever-changing environment, so it's very difficult to kind of hone in on what's working because the next day it could be something completely different. And so that's been very interesting, and we do have a team that really studies that and then creates our content in relation to how it might best be received by students. But another aspect, I believe, of social media, and I don't know if it's as much social media, but it's something that's coming up a lot in higher education, is OpenAI or like the AI softwares. And so as a student government, we're kind of looking and working on a heat task force right now with the university about like, okay, well, we understand that this software is out there. You can't really deny it, but you also understand its implications in regards to maybe academic misconduct or using it as a resource in senses. And so right now we're looking at, okay, so how do we actually make this a resource rather than a mechanism to kind of more or less like cheat through an assignment. And so kind of again, looking at technology as a tool rather than something that is kind of detrimental to your academic performance, and figuring out how we can use this new innovation at the levels of higher education to more so provide more assistance to students and more instruction. Because I think by adding it as a tool, you more or less see it go away as a way of shortcuts, basically.
Social media. It is a amazing place. It's an amazing tool, but it's also one of the scariest places that you can put information. I use social media a lot. It's where I started my online career and all that. It's the base of where I do my advocacy. But I've also learned that there's stay off of it unless you don't need to be on it. But you can learn so many things about so many different people across the world. You can see where the problems are, or where the problems are coming up. And it's a great way to get information from everywhere and to share your information, but it can also be used for that reason for the exact negative. And so I really think that it is a really important tool, but you do need to be careful because it can backfire immediately. But yeah, I think it's a very important tool.
I also think that it's really good at promoting civic engagement and discussions. There's political streamers on Twitch or YouTube, and they'll go for hours on end looking at different things, bringing in their perspective and nuance to certain topics. And it's a great way for people in a short amount of time to learn someone else's perspective and add to their knowledge of the world and politics and civic engagement. And that's something that I personally do when I'm going to bed at night. Sometimes I'll put on a video of someone that I disagree with just to learn their perspective and adjust mine as needed.
Yes, Edith.
I joined the League of Women Voters during the pandemic, and I didn't know before that, but there's a real lack of youth engagement and membership in the League of Women Voters, and I find that to be really concerning, and I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for how to attract more younger members into the organization.
Ideas for attracting younger members to the League of Women Voters, Evan.
Yeah, so something that I'm really hoping to work on is one of these days I'm trying to get into either Sheldon or South Eugene High School because they're very close to me, or in Grants Pass High School where I personally went, and get on the ground with students, get them registered to vote, let them know, hey, in Oregon, you can register to vote, or you can pre-register to vote at 16. You don't have to wait until you're 18. And there's so many things that get in the way of young people voting, or students where they may be more liberal or more conservative and their parents might be the opposite. So it's important to educate them on these things, let them know, hey, you can register. It's just, just getting on the ground in the schools, I think, is very important. Something that the youth council is working on with the league as a whole is mock elections, and that's a way for students to really learn about issues themselves and who potentially could be representing them.
Any other ideas? Thank you, Evan.
I think sometimes we've noticed the greatest barrier to getting more younger involvement is just the lack of information or like knowledge that this is an organization that exists. And so again, it might be like going to the ground and then reaching out to students where they like at schools or maybe at different clubs. If you're looking at like involved community members, especially like in the youth, like that might be a great place to start too, because you might already have those like foundations and building blocks already generating. And so I think those are two things that came to mind as Evan was talking, but does anyone? Okay.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Have any of you thought about running for office? Not right now, but in the future, any aspirations, whether it be, you know, local, city council, school board, that type of thing, or higher office?
I hate to be hogging the microphone, but this just reminded me of my friend Deanie that I did that walkout with in 2021 with our school board that was quite controversial in my hometown. We wanted to get a youth liaison, and if not someone that could vote, just someone that has a voice in the school board, because something that in education, students don't really have a voice, despite them and the educators themselves being the ones that are most affected by policies. So yeah, my friend Deanie is working on that. I also have a friend named Krish from Loudoun County, Virginia, and he's looking at trying to run for a school board position when he turns 18. And I have another friend from Boise, Idaho, who ran and was on their school board as a senior in high school. And now he's a freshman at UNC. So it's really something that is really important to have me personally, I believe there should be a requirement for students to be on a school board, or at least some sort of voice. Something that I personally did was I attended school board meetings just to kind of learn what's going on in the school board and let other students know, hey, this is something that's coming up. They're trying to get this AP class or get rid of these textbooks for XYZ.
Yeah. Well, kind of a related question. And you touched on this, Evan, but I didn't know if others had the experience. Have you had interactions with elected officials? Well, that was a yes or no question. Do you care to speak about any interactions that you have had with elected officials?
So recently I went to the Oregon State University versus University of Oregon Civil War game. I don't know if y'all heard of it, but there I had the opportunity to sit in the president's box. I saw that. Sit in the president's box for that game. And I was able to meet with Representative Chavez DeRaymer, as well as both senators for the state of Oregon. And so that was a really cool experience for me. And going back to your other question too, is definitely something that I have kind of considered as I look at the different roles that this position has allowed me to explore. And so as it relates to advocacy efforts, as it relates to kind of being a representative, I represent technically about like 26,000 students right now, which is crazy to think about. But I think that kind of thought has led me to maybe look more so into how I can get involved more so in government, and then talking to the different legislators. We also recently had the opportunity to speak with Representative Graber within the State House, and then every year OSU does a lobbying day where we go and meet with different legislators. So kind of having those different conversations and seeing the different roles that they all play have really been impactful in kind of like how I'm looking at my career in the future.
Yeah, I've had, encounters with county commissioners and city councilors as well as other, staff at Benton County. And I just want to say it's always been a very positive experience, and they've always been very welcoming. So yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about all of it, so, yeah.
Alright. So here's a question for Lynthia. Are you thinking about how you're going to transform your involvement when you go to OSU? Do you want to be part of ASOSU?
It's great. Well, I had personally never heard of anything until now. And it had never actually been a thought in my mind, but neither had been joining LB's student government until it was really just a whim, to be honest. I hate to say that, but it was a wonderful whim, it turned out to be. But I am definitely thinking about it. Obviously, it depends on what the future holds and what happens. But I think it would be an amazing opportunity and a really great experience. So it's definitely on my mind.
All right. We have time for one more question. Yes.
I wonder if there's someone you look to for a role model or for inspiration.
Great. All right. Role model. Anybody you look to for inspiration? That's a great closing question. Thank you.
As a child, long before I was disabled, actually, I had a strange fascination with Bethany Hamilton. She's a surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack. I see it as a bit of a foreshadowing now, but her steadfastness and courage, even when there were people in her family telling her that she wouldn't ever surf again, and she told them, yes, I will. And so she did. And I've had people in my family tell me that I won't make it anywhere past where I was at the time. And I took inspiration from her and said, watch me. And so I like to think I've made it somewhere as I'm sitting in a room talking to people. So yeah, actually, Bethany Hamilton has strangely been one of the biggest role models growing up and now living with a disability.
Thank you.
I think for me, I've always looked up to different female politicians or female that are kind of working in government. So a big one for me has been Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I actually bought her autobiography a couple days ago, so I will be reading that. But recently, just with the exposure that I've had to our kind of university government, I've really gathered inspiration just from like the advising staff that I have. And then also with the interactions I've had with our university president, it's just very inspiring to see the way in which she carries herself, in which she kind of like goes about her leadership strategy. And so she's very new to Oregon State University, but the way that she has kind of made it her own and taken this and made it into a really cool environment is very inspiring for me. And then even just the students that I get to work with every day, I think I'm pulling a lot just from their leadership strategies also.
My mom has always been my biggest cheerleader. She's my best friend. She's a second grade teacher in District 7 in Grants Pass, and I admire her ability to push through when there's so many things getting in her way. Not too long ago, she hadn't finished college, and then she told my dad, hey, I'm gonna finish my bachelor's. Went ahead and did it, and then she just ended up finishing her master's and is an amazing human being. In Grants Pass, there's not a lot of diversity, and she makes a big effort to make sure that every one of her students feels included. Having different colored pencils for everyone's different skin tones, having a Harvey Milk poster up in her classroom when she taught 5th grade, having rainbows. She makes a big effort to make sure everyone feels included, and that's something that I really admire.
So I have two. The first one is a professor that I worked with the air quality project, Dr. Britt Holman. She's a former professor at University of Vermont, environmental engineering, was what she taught. I cold emailed her just like out of the blue, just like an interested student. And she ended up answering and, for about like, well, to this day, so like, over 2 years. We've been in constant contact, and throughout the course of the project, she would meet with us over Zoom at like 6 a.m. before we had school, like every other week, and she'd talk about our project. And she served as the mentor, right, too. So just like someone that was so interested in learning, and took time out of her like very busy schedule, but she's a full professor, to meet with high school students, was extremely inspiring and something that I would love to do when I have established a career. And secondly, just the people of the landfill community, they have to deal with a lot, as I'm sure you all know, and their perseverance and just their continued activism and belief that their voices can make an impact to stop the landfill expansion is really inspiring, and I hope to be half as motivated as they are. So, yeah.
Well, I have some closing remarks, but I absolutely want to begin by giving you accolades. You all are amazing. So much. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, your efforts, all the time that you're devoting to, helping others, and really appreciate your spending your evening with us here. Thank you. So we hope you have been inspired tonight by these young leaders. We hope you've been inspired to become involved if you aren't already. And although looking around the room, I see a lot of involved people. I want to begin the close with a call to action to everyone in the room. And here are 3 ideas to get you started. First, sign up for local government newsletters. Both the city of Corvallis and Benton County have online newsletters that will connect you with what is happening in our local government. So all you have to do is go to the websites, the Corvallis, Oregon.gov, and the county website, sign up for the newsletters and read them, because there's a lot going on. You may be surprised. So that's first, sign up for local government newsletters. Second, attend programs sponsored by the league like you did tonight. Our next program is next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, December 6th. It will, the speaker is our city manager, Mark Shepard, and the focus will be on the proposed $49 million civic campus that includes demolition of the current city hall. And I think people have a lot of questions about that. And so the league felt it was important to invite city manager Shepard to come and share with us. Then in January, we will continue our annual Know Your City series with 2 separate programs. The first is on the city's multimodal transportation system. And then the second program is about the city budget and how you can get involved and make an impact. Budget decisions are super important. And so we invite you to come and learn more. Third, of course, join the League of Women Voters. And we have a lot of league members here already, but I wanted to announce that at our last board meeting, our board made the decision to make membership in the League of Women Voters of Corvallis free to everyone 25 and under. So you can join the league for no cost tonight if you're 25 and under. And of course, the league is a great way to get involved and make a difference in our community, our state, and our nation. And our local league has several active committees on climate change, community planning, housing, putting on programs like this, and voter education. And any one of those committees would welcome your participation. So sign up for local government newsletters, attend programs put on by the league, and join the League of Women Voters if you are not already a member. So thank you again to our wonderful panelists, and thank you all for being here tonight.